Hello everyone, Mr. Kaczynski here, working on skill number 2 in section L of IXL's Algebra 1 skills. Graphing solutions to absolute value equations, really not a lot different than what we did in the last video, but it gives us a chance to practice a little bit more solving absolute value equations. So here we go. First job is you always get the absolute value quantity isolated. That's already done for us here. So then we write two equations. We say that that quantity inside the absolute value symbols could be -4 because the absolute value of -4 is 4, or that quantity could be +4 because the absolute value of +4 is 4. And then we solve each one of those equations. So with this one, subtract 4 from both sides, we get w equals -8, and we can plot that on the graph. And then on this one, again, we subtract 4 from both sides and we get 0, and we can plot that on the number line. So we're just taking our solutions and plotting them on the number line. All right, so with this one though, again, the first thing I need to do is isolate the absolute value symbol. So I'm going to divide both sides by -7. -70 divided by -7 is 10. And -7 times the absolute value of b minus 50 is the absolute value of b minus 50. So now that we have the absolute value quantity isolated, we can go ahead and write two equations. We know that b minus 50 could be -10 because the absolute value of -10 is 10, or b minus 50 could be +10 because obviously the absolute value of +10 is 10. And then we solve both those equations. Add 50 to both sides. -10 plus 50 is 40. Plot that. Add 50 to both sides. 10 plus 50 is 60. And plot that point on our number line. And that's it. Let's do a few more. They get progressively tougher, and then there's a little trick at the end too. All right, so we're going to add 7 to both sides here to isolate the absolute value quantity. Then we'll write our two new equations, okay? W plus 55 could be the absolute value, or could be -15 because the absolute value of -15 is 15, or W plus 55 could be +15 because the absolute value of +15 is 15. So the only difference between this one and the last one we had to isolate the absolute value quantity through division. This time we isolated it through addition. All right, so still we subtract 55 from both sides, and -15 minus 55 is -70. There's my -70. Over here, subtract 55 from both sides, and we get -40. So I plot that point. This one's a little bit tougher. Isolating the variable really isn't any tougher. Or isolating the absolute value quantity rather isn't any tougher. We just subtract 8 from both sides, and we get that quantity equals 900. Then we write two equations. 6w minus 900 equals -900, or 6w minus 900 equals +900. All right, so let's solve this green one by adding 900 to both sides and then dividing both sides by 6, and we get 0. And over here, again, we're going to add 900 to both sides. Big difference, though. We get 1800 instead of 0. And then when we divide 1800 by 6, we get 300. So that's our other solution to this equation, 300. All right, last one. I told you there was a little trick at the end here. It's not a huge trick, but watch what happens when we first isolate this absolute value quantity. So we got to do it in 2 steps this time, kind of. Subtract 9 from both sides. We get 8 times the absolute value of negative 4w minus 40 equals 0. And then divide both sides by 8. And we get still 0 on the right. 0 divided by 8 is 0. All right, so when this is the case, there's only one solution to this. If an absolute value quantity equals 0, it's because that piece inside the absolute value quantity equals 0. That's the only way you can take the absolute value of something and get 0. So we only have one equation to solve in this case. So just add 40 to both sides and then divide both sides by negative 4, and we get the one and only solution this time. So only one dot that we're going to plot on this number line. So when the absolute value quantity equals 0, you're only going to get one solution. Don't forget, if the absolute value quantity equals a negative number, which I didn't come across any when I was doing this, there would be no solutions. So I guess we wouldn't plot anything. All right, so that's how you graph solutions to absolute value equations. You got to solve them, then you graph them.